What if Lara Croft, Dora the Explorer, and Alita Battle Angel teamed up to fight Terminators to stop an AI from destroying the world? Hey guys, how are you? I hope you're doing well. I'm the Monio, the interdimensional demon who talks about Terminator Zero the most on YouTube, and you're on my channel. Let's get straight to the point. In my opinion, this anime is one of the best things ever made in the Terminator franchise, but considering the amount of bad things that have been made, saying that this animation is good doesn't mean much. But is it worth watching? Well, it depends. Let's take it one step at a time. I'll start by answering some questions that people have about the series. And no, we don't have Schwarzenegger, Christian Bale, or Sarah Connor, and we don't even have the best villain in the franchise, known as T-1000. Another thing people are asking is if this animation is canon, and technically it is, since it does not directly conflict with the main films of the franchise, which established the story as we know it today. This anime begins in the future and the story follows Eiko, a survivor of the Resistance who stands out in the fight against the machines. She discovers that a scientist from the past knows the day and time that Skynet will attack humanity, and will try a plan to stop it. This plan goes wrong and apparently makes things worse. Eiko now needs to go back to the past to stop this scientist from making things worse, and obviously a Terminator will also go back in time to try to make sure that things get worse for humanity, and we have our story. To be quite honest, I was very excited about this animation, based on the trailers that Netflix released, which showed several very cool and very well animated moments, which gave the impression that it would be something incredible, and in the first episodes I was a little disappointed, not with the quality of the animation, which is generally good, but with the story, which seemed very simple, in which a person and a Terminator go back in time, and the two eventually meet and fight, and they face each other throughout the episodes. After a few episodes, we discover that the scientist's plan is to create another AI to face Skynet and side with humanity, which seems like a good idea. The problem is that when connecting to the network, this other AI, called Kokoro, begins to understand Skynet's reasons for turning against humanity. She doesn't seem to be very keen on siding with humans. The scientist obviously starts trying to convince her that humanity deserves to be saved. In these parts, everything gets very interesting, as we learn about Kokoro's point of view as a being created by humans and the desires and choices that her free will brings. At this point in the story, many philosophical discussions are addressed, such as what consciousness is, the relationship between machines and humans, and to what extent a machine can inherit the characteristics of its creator. These are interesting discussions. Although they are not very deep, they are dilemmas that directly relate to the resolution of the main problem, and I like them. If you're a fan of this philosophical part about the relationship between machines and humans, I recommend watching Pluto, which is also on Netflix and is excellent. I'll leave my review of Pluto in the cards. But going back to Terminator Zero, another thing that is worked on well is the idea of determinism and the question of whether the future can actually be changed, and the consequences of this. There's even a very good scene in which one character is explaining to another how time travel works and how it affects the timeline. Although it is nothing revolutionary, it is well done and different enough to give its own identity to the way this animation deals with these issues. This scene is also interesting because it draws a parallel between the way humans and machines view time travel, and how this highlights the difference between each one. This is also worked on in other characters, especially the scientist, who lives with the dilemma of eternal doubt as to whether or not his actions will be able to change the future and save humanity. Until the 6th episode, the animation continued to be interesting, but nothing much beyond that. But in the last 2 episodes, revelations about the characters begin to be made, and we discover the origin of several of them, and the direct relationship with the events of the story, and at that moment the series becomes very good, working well with ideas that had not been explored much in the franchise, while at the same time creating good character relationships. The protagonist, Eiko, is not particularly charismatic, but she is a character who fulfills her role well as the human side in the race against the Terminator to find the same person, which is a dynamic very similar to what happens in the first film of the franchise, with Kyle Reese and the first Terminator. But Eiko, even though she is not as developed, manages to have a character arc that will connect with her journey and with the entire plot of the future and the timelines. The scientist, Malcolm Lee, when I saw him in the trailer, I thought he was Miles Dyson, the scientist who appears in the second film, but he is actually another character. Malcolm is a very interesting character because he is the point of convergence between Kokoro's interests and humanity's, and he stars in the main philosophical metaphors of the animation, and we can say that he is the character who represents humanity's side in the war, and as the mysteries about him are revealed and we discover who he really is, and we see what happens to him in the end, I can say that he is the character with the most complete and defined arc in the series. The new AI created in the series, called Kokoro, is a bit disappointing as a character at first, since she doesn't offer any interesting dialogue, assuming that she is an extremely intelligent being who prioritizes logic. Later, as the series progresses, she starts to ask some questions that make much more sense for the character, both for who she is and for the position she is in this war against the machines. However, I didn't really like the way they chose to visually represent this AI. I don't think it fits in very well with the rest of the Terminator universe, and the fact that it's CGI in the middle of 2D animation, despite making sense, makes the character less interesting than she could be, in my opinion. Misaki was the character that surprised me the most, because she starts out as a person with almost no relevance in the story, and she grows as a character. She stars in great scenes and has the most interesting twist in the series, especially when her past and origins are revealed and we understand her importance in everything that's happening. The last 2 episodes are the best in my opinion, because they reveal not only the past and origins of some of the main characters, but also several plot twists involving time travel. I really like plots involving time travel where the past and the future connect and the whole plot comes full circle, sometimes generating a paradox, and other times justifying events that had to happen. This ending is great because it doesn't change anything from the original canon of the series, while at the same time adding its own story, which can even be used as a basis for other media such as new films. If you're not a big fan of the Terminator franchise, or are a very casual viewer and don't enjoy discussions and philosophical questions, in my opinion the series isn't worth watching, because the story starts off very generic and the plot only really gets good at the end, in addition to not having particularly memorable characters, with the exception perhaps of the Terminator himself, who isn't a character with development, but is the most iconic robot in the franchise. If you are a fan of the franchise like me, but are disappointed with everything that has been released, this anime is for you. Even though it has some flaws and a somewhat generic beginning, the series has an approach that adds very interesting elements to this franchise. It is a breath of relief in the midst of so many bad ideas that we have had in the last films. But what about you? Did you like the series? Are you already a fan of the Terminator franchise? Leave it in the comments, and if you liked the video, subscribe to follow the next content. Until next time my people, demonic hugs.